Matías De La Flor, bienvenido a Token Theater Friends. I'm very happy to be talking to you today. We're gonna talk a lot about like all the different things that you're doing in your career, but let's get started with the show that you're going to be doing about a month from now with Jaime Lozano and La Familia. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Jose, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's a really interesting story because I was doing a week as Lancelot at Camelot, and my first night, it was a Lincoln Center gala, and it was a very kind of a big deal for the theater. It was my first night on. It was incredibly thrilling, and in the audience was Jaime and Florencia, and really. I had no idea who they were. They didn't know me. I'm new to the city. And they were incredibly generous with me and reached out to me via social media and showed their support of a Latino Lancelot. And it was a really beautiful moment. And then from that, Jaime and I and Florencia kept in touch, and Jaime talked to me about this concert at the atrium that he's doing. And he had written a song about Peru, which is where I'm from Lima, Peru. And he sent it over to me, and I automatically was like, you're literally and figuratively speaking my language. So I was very excited about the prospect of working with him. And then he offered if I would be interested in doing this concert with him on August 4th at Lincoln Center, and with some incredible people that I have admired for some time. And of course I said yes, and I'm very excited to be able to work with him y La Familia and tell these stories about what it is to be an immigrant. I moved from Lima when I was 5 to the US, and I've had my experience with my immigration and what that's been like, building a new life, but then also keeping your roots and how that is all balanced. And the biggest breaking point, not the biggest breakthrough for me was when I found that the adaptation and the new life and all these new things can actually work through my art together and have a catharsis for me, and then hopefully for an audience. So really, to be able to work with someone whose mission statement is, about, bringing light to immigration and not making it really a dirty word, but really a word full of hope and beauty. It's an absolute pleasure for me. So I couldn't be more excited.
As a singer, what's it like to go from Lerner and Lowe to Lozano? I love all the L's.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, it's the great. That's a great question. I think that what they share is really specific storytelling. Lancelot, and I speak of Lancelot specifically, but this also goes for my ensemble track. If ever I would leave you, how could it be in springtime? Knowing how in spring I'm bewitched by you so. There is a rhythm, a cadence, for me, I love all the seasons he speaks of when he speaks of her, and the difference between summer and springtime and winter and fall. And then you have Jaime, who's saying like, I miss your lucuma. I miss Pablito's smile. I miss the taste of home. And I think that both of those have an incredible through line, because that is the taste of home for that character, and the taste of home for this character is her in springtime. So for me, I always find what is the base, what is the foundation, what is the thing that I can root into. And for me, a lot of the time it is my roots, it is my culture, it is the strength and the hope and the faith that I find in those stories. So for me, really, going from one to the other, I find it really is similar in a way, because Lancelot is an immigrant. He's a French immigrant into England who is looking to be in these rooms where these decisions are made because he believes in it and he has a faith, and I think that that's the same thing when you're talking about Lozano's work. When you're in a new country, you're doing what you have to do to make your dreams come true, and that comes with challenges, but it also comes with a lot of beauty, and you find the things that root you back. And I love how much he talks about food. And for me, food has been an incredible, Peruvian cuisine is, ya sabes, man, es lo más bello que hay para mí en este mundo. Pero I just find a lot of pockets of where I can feel really at home in Jaime's work, and then also in Camelot. And the beautiful thing about that is that it really is about perspective, so I choose to have that perspective.
Thank you for that, and also thank you for making me crave ceviche. Now I'm I'm salivating now thinking
Okay,
about ceviche y la cerveza.
Una cusqueña, un cevichito, man. Pero qué rica la comida peruana, man. I love it. I love it. I love it.
You said that you're new to the city. So
Yeah.
what was that experience like? Where did you come from?
Right. Yeah. So I was doing my undergrad in North Carolina in Winston-Salem at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts and the School of Drama. 2 years before then, I had been in a community college. It's called Florida School of the Arts. I'd done 2 years there, and then I did 4 years at UNCSA. So I graduated school. I had been writing a play for about a year at that point. I did a public reading of it. And then after I did that reading, about 3 weeks later in August, I moved to the city. I moved here the 13th of August. And I basically, I got an apartment. I got all my stuff in a U-Haul. I drove 12 hours. It was insanely frightening and exciting and cathartic. And the ride was full of me, like, just thinking about the past and the future and all the things that led to this moment. And then I got here, and all of a sudden I was just living here, and I was like, okay, all right. And then, I think my audition for Camelot was September. So it was like a month after I got here. I had done a couple of other auditions. I remember one story I love is I had gone in for Raoul for the Phantom of the Opera, and right before it was gonna close, we didn't know that at the time, obviously. And they said, you can sing, sing All I Ask of You, and then sing anything you want that's legit musical theater. So I said, okay, I'm gonna sing If Ever I Would Leave You, because I know Camelot is coming up and I really want to be in Camelot. So I sang it, and that was kind of like my voice to the universe saying, please bring me an audition for the show. So I got it in September, and I did the self-tape, and I felt great about it. Waited a few weeks, and then I got to go in for a callback with Bart and Kim and Adam and some of the team, and it really was a transformative experience, because it was at a point in my life where I was like, I was maybe like a month and a half living in New York, so I felt a bit settled, a bit like, okay, I have a base here. I'm not traveling here to do an audition. And it was a lovely experience, because they really gave me permission to just be vulnerable, to be in a place, to not lead from my power center, but lead from my emotional center, which when you think of the knight in shining armor, you might not necessarily make that choice. But the beautiful thing about them allowing me to make that choice was it made the knight in shining armor a three-dimensional person. And I think in that moment, what I felt was space, space to just like stand and deliver and not have to be this person, and that was lovely. And that was really my introduction to New York City. And then I got the job a week later, so we did the workshop where we were doing movement, and it was just this spectacular, like, mixture of, like, I didn't feel like commercial theater. Everyone was telling me that I was like, I know, of course it's not for profit at Lincoln Center, but the scale was so big that people were telling me, like, don't get used to this, because this is not normal. We're doing, like, it felt like we were in movement class at school. Just knowing that we had this arc that we were building to, that was going to be this show and this production, right? But we were focusing on, like, how to move, how to breathe, how to send energy, how to be an ensemble. And it was a really, really beautiful experience. And for me, coming right out of school, it was like, I felt comfortable in that. We were doing Suzuki, we were doing like Lecoq. I was feeling very comfortable in those situations. And then, after that, I worked with Moises Kaufman on a play, Las Aventuras de Juan Planchard. He did a workshop of this Venezuelan novel that's spectacular. And Moises is a genius and truly an incredible theater maker. And I was able to assistant direct for him for a week and a half. And like the penultimate day of that, I got the call that I was going to do it on Broadway. So it was kind of just boom. And then it was the holidays, and I was able to kind of process it all. And then we started in January. But that's my New York story. I moved here, and yeah, I got real lucky, and the stars aligned in a way.
Yeah, it's incredible. And by the way, like, Camelot's one of the only shows that I wish that I would fly to New York City to get to see. So, no me enojos, in algún momento you want to sing a little bit of Camelot for me. That's an amazing arrival in New York City kind of story. But like arriving there and then almost immediately getting work. Does that mean that by now do you have your favorite New York spots? Have you been able to make yourself at home, or are you just mostly theater to home?
That's a great question. I was able to find my way around because I think I think and I tell a lot of artists that are coming out of school now too, that like you have to really enjoy the moments when you're not working, because those are the moments that feed the work. Because truly, like, what the job of an actor and artist really is, storyteller, is to reflect nature, right? And how can we reflect nature if we're not living in it? And for me, being here, before I had, the 12-hour days, I was soaking it in, man. I was like, I was teaching, and I love, and that's another, thing I do. I was teaching. I was, going around Soho, not knowing where to go, and the East Village, and Washington Heights, and I live in Harlem, and the Upper West and the Upper East, and looking at the theater here and the theater there, and the water and the park, and just kind of taking it all in. And so and I'm a huge food guy, so all the restaurants I could try. I found a lot of Peruvian restaurants that I love. I found a lovely community of people. Am I done? No, I'm just getting started, but I feel like I got a really good taste and a really good, to start to plant those roots down, because it's really important for me, like the notion of home. I think that's that's something that a lot of artists, specifically Latin artists, are always trying to dive into, is what is home, especially because we come from so many different places. Like, so much of my family's in Peru, but then my father lives in Brazil, and my mother and my sister and her kids and my stepfather and that side of the family, they live in Florida. So like, it's kind of like this puzzle, right? But for me, what I've noticed is home really is where I feel authentic, telling stories and connecting the dots between cultures and all the things and that's why I love food so much, because Peruvian cuisine wouldn't exist without immigration. It was all about all these different cuisines coming together and building this new thing. And that's what I think, as a culture, as a society, we could be doing more of. We could be seeing, instead of the how this hurts us or this hurts us, how can it feed us? How can it do that? And I think that, for me, New York has been a beautiful place to put those dots together. And yeah, I feel like, but then really quickly, it got really like, we're working. During the preview period, it was rehearsal all day, shows, 2 show days, doing it all the time, switching, making changes, making cuts, but it's difficult. This is a really difficult job, but how lucky to get to be in this room with these incredible artists. I mean, for me, coming out of school, it was just the most, it was grad school. It was grad school like this, you know what I mean? But in the profession, I get to understudy Jordan Donica, who has become a wonderful friend of mine. And to watch him every night, like, go out there and like have that like supreme faith and confidence in himself and in his voice. I mean, that's how I see him. It's been an incredible lesson for me, to be able to how to do that, how to actually be on Broadway, because everyone has the dream and the thought and the hope, and I hope I get it. But getting it is a different story. You have to be able to find your roots, your values, your morals inside of that work, or else you'll kind of get lost, and it took me a while. And then, working with Bart and with Aaron, it's a very intimidating thing to work with your heroes, to work with Philippa and Andrew, like, I've been watching these people since I've been listening to Philippa Sue on cast albums since since I started liking theater when I was in high school, to then suddenly be playing opposite her, what that was like. For that week I did Lancelot, to play opposite her was an incredible gift, because wow, like, I'll forever get to carry that in my heart and forever get to see what it was like to have that connection and intimacy and arc with, that Lancelot and Guinevere have with Philippa Sue, who I have admired, but then also who became such a dear friend, and like, that was such a lovely lesson, that it's like, at the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all storytellers, and we're all here to like try to advance the thing. So when it comes to New York, that's the roots. That's what I have here. That's the lesson that this city has has taught me, and it's been a beautiful thing, but it's also slapped me with that. You know what I mean? In the and I'm here for it, man. I'm here for the beauty. I'm here for the pain. You learn from it all.
You just said that you started liking theater when you were in high school. So what did you want to be when you were growing up? And how did your parents take when you said, Mamá, papá, voy a estudiar teatro?
That's such a good question. I think I wanted to be Spider-Man when I was young. Like I wanted to be Spider-Man. I remember like I was in Peru, and every time that we would cross under a bridge, we would have like the rule was you hold your breath and you make a wish, right? And I would always hold my breath and be like, I just want to be Spider-Man. I just like, just give me the power to be Spider-Man. And I was so into it as a kid. So I feel like I always wanted to be an actor. I just had no idea that that was an option. You know what I mean? I did like, theater, like I did plays, you know what I mean? When I was in middle school and elementary school, but it wasn't until my, the end of my junior year when I did a play as, more of like, I was like 17, 16. And I remember the reaction from the audience. And I remember I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I was just kind of like playing, and the audience was so responsive and so in it. And I remember like being surprised on stage at how that was. And that was like an electricity that I'd never felt. And that completely changed my perspective. And I remember I was having dinner with the cast at like a Buffalo Wild Wings afterwards, at Pembroke Pines Charter High School. And I remember I was like sitting at the table and I was watching everyone just laughing and having a good time and eating. And I like slammed my hand on the table like really dramatically. And I was like, guys, I am majoring in theater. And I just like, I announced it. I proclaimed it. And everyone went, ah! And everyone just was like so happy because they all wanted me to, but I was denying it. And then after that, that's when I started kind of taking it more seriously. And that senior year, it was about like, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to do this? And my teacher recommended I go to a community college to really like, get my feet wet, see what I like, see what the path is, and really do some plays, do some musicals, get into it. And my mom was very, very into the idea. Her and my sister always kind of saw something in me that was, that there was a spark there. My dad, it took him a second, I think, to come around because, my dad, he's a wonderful man and he's like really done great in his field. And like, I really admire his business sense. And this was kind of the opposite of that, especially at that time, because I wasn't aware of the business of being an artist. I just liked acting. So that's what I had to offer, and he, he was kind of like the other side of the argument. It was like, okay, like, let's think about this, etc. And it was, not at all a bad way. It was a very logistical argument. And that was something that needed to be had, especially when you're thinking about building a life. But I remember that he came to see me in a play my senior year, the first musical I ever did. And and after that, he never said anything again. He was always just like, yeah, just go, and that was really beautiful that it took him seeing me working, which really tracks. And I think that's lovely. And he's been incredibly supportive. My mom has been incredibly, my sister, everyone in my family has just been like because I always say it's been 7 years for me since I started, and every year and every minute, just incredibly supportive and there for me. So it took them a second, but once, the crazy thing really was like when I got this job, for them all to be like kind of did that. And I was like, I know, like what's happening? I don't know. I just get on the train and smile. Like, don't do anything. Just be there. And then, for my mother, the first time she saw Camelot was it was my first night as Lancelot, because she was going to come the opening night. But, this happened. So she flew in. And, she was sitting at Lincoln Center, and all of a sudden, like, Lancelot has the most epic entrance, one of the most epic entrances I've ever seen in the theater, period. And she just saw me do it, and she couldn't really describe what the experience was like. And for me, that was everything, because, one of the questions I've been really asking myself is like, what is this all for? What are we doing this for? And that goes back to the creation of work. Like, why are you making art? Is it for the sake of art, or is it because you have something to say? And I think that for me, really it's been about reflecting my community, right? And being a vessel for that and a voice for that. It's not for me, right? It has to resonate with me and come from a personal place, but I don't think that it's for me. You know, I don't write plays for me to read them out loud in my living room, right? So when I had that moment with my mother on that stage on that day, it was like a real big reality moment of like, oh, okay, this is happening. This is real. Like, you're on Broadway, you played this role, you know, and it was lovely. So that relationship with my parents and with my family has been incredible. And my sister came to see the show with her 2 kids, Penelope and Alex, and just to like, you know, hear them singing the songs, and like, you know, they woke me up the next day, like, as they stayed with me, and they woke me up the next day singing like the lusty month of May, and it was just like beautiful, you know, like and it just goes back to like that first impulse I felt when I was a junior. It was playing, right? And then people celebrating your playing. It's like, that's a real job. That's a real job. It comes with a lot of logistics, and it comes with a lot of business that you have to deal with and take care of and create and recreate and fail and win and feel glory and feel depression. You feel all the spectrum of emotions, but it's just all so worth it when those kids sing, you know, and they have that little moment that I had, you know. Or like, I saw this incredible video of Jaime's son like singing Camelot, like on the Camelot sign, and he tagged me in it because he's the one, like, he saw me do it, you know. And like, that's a young Latin kid who saw like a Latin Lancelot, and you know, and like that for me, like, is just a beautiful thing. It doesn't even need to be political, you know what I mean? It's just a human thing. And I think that like when we get back to those roots again, that's the best.
And that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Matthias. But also, you have to tell us, you have to share with us, what was that musical that your dad saw you in that blew his mind so much?
Oh my God, you're gonna laugh. This is incredible that I'm talking about this. It was my senior year show, which was High School Musical, and I played Troy Bolton. In yeah, so the whole 9, I was like basketballs and the start of something new, and you know, it's hilarious, man, because it all tracks. Like I was a kid with my sister watching this when it was coming out on Disney Channel, and then I did it my senior year before going off to college to pursue this thing that I'm now able to do. Like, it's all such a crazy, like, full circle thing. Yeah, so it was High School Musical. That was my grand performance that my father saw and was like, oh yeah, you can do something with this. Yeah, man, I'll never forget that. That was like my week of being cool in high school. Everyone was like, oh yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Very cool. Yeah, that was it.
I mean, I love High School Musical. Team Sharpay, para siempre, forever.
Para siempre.
What makes your spider sense tingle when you're on stage in Camelot?
Mistakes. Mistakes are sent from God, Stephen Sondheim says, right? And anytime anything goes a little bit to the left when it should go right, that's when that sense kicks in, and that's when you're forced to be present. And I think that presence is earned, right? I think that like you have to put yourself in the position to be open and to be vulnerable, and then you can be present, right? And you can breathe and be with your partner and play the tennis match that is acting, right? But it's earned. Sometimes you go here and there, or you had some bad news before the show, or you you didn't eat enough, or you feel like your knee hurts that day, or whatever. There's a million things that go on. But then when something happens, something real, not stage, something real, like you drop a prop, or the sword falls, or you say a line in a way that surprises you, or your partner doesn't look at you when they usually do, that is everything for me. When I'm put in that position of uncomfortability in a safe space, right? I think being uncomfortable and safe is really important to being an artist. If you can do both, and you can have both, and I think that's up to the director and to the team, and like the space that you build inside the nucleus that is the show, right? But that's what gets me excited, man. I mean, always, right? Like, and I remember like being terrified, like going on stage and like opening act 2 with If Ever I Would Leave You. It's very terrifying thing. Like, that's why I was saying about Jordan, like how I admire him and his experience and how he does what he does. And I'm trying to soak it in. Right. But when it was my turn, it was me. I had to, like, you know, walk out there and sing the song to Philippa Sue in front of all these people with a 30-piece orchestra. I'd never sang with an orchestra before by myself. So I was doing it all for the first time in this scenario. And that fear was my fuel, you know, but it really is a perspective switch. It's like, okay, I can't let it belittle me. I have to let it, you know, empower me. And that is hard. And that is something that every millisecond I had to remind myself on stage. I think that acting is about battling negative thoughts in real time, because whenever you're doing something that's like actually new, you're like, that was stupid. Like, I shouldn't have said it that way. Like, I shouldn't have said to be or to not to be in that way. Like, that's not the right way to say it. It's like, but that is the right way to say it, is to say it wrong. You know, audiences don't want to be lectured, right? I had a great mentor. I have a great mentor. Her name is Lisa Wolpe. She says, don't perform the text, reckon with it. And I've been really trying to get back to that, because it's really difficult, because when you're in that scenario on Broadway, in this place that I found myself in, I was like, well, now's not the time to reckon. Now's the time to be good. Now's the time to perform it. Now's the time to be, you know, in a straight line. But it's not. It's not. That's fear, you know? So I remember coming off, it took me a couple shows, you know, but I remember coming off stage, I think it was the Friday night of my run, where I felt like I actually sang that song from a vulnerable place. Like, really, actually just speaking to Philippa and to Guinevere and to love and to duty and will and God. And it takes time, and it's hard to find again, because it's like if I quote the show, it's one brief shining moment where you know, but then you have to go through ebbs and flows and you know, but that's what it's all about, right? Like that brief shining moment of like, oh, I was alive, I was fully present, I was communicating and being communicated to, you know, and it was just us that existed, but there's 1,200 people there too. You know, it's a thrilling roller coaster.
Reckoning with text is something that you have been doing with your own work as a playwright. So can you talk a little bit about Romeo y Julieta Limeños?
Well, Romeo y Julieta Limeño really was born out of a place of, I don't know what to do next. I was, you know, it was a summer before my senior year. I get these kicks where I'm like, all right, like I gotta like plan. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I gotta do that. And I was like, okay, well, what have I done? What do I want to do? I want to make work for what? For the Latin community. Saying what? I want to talk about family and culture and food. Okay, great. Have that. How do I do that? I put that to the side. And then I remember I had worked with Jackie Alexander, who's the artistic director of the North Carolina Black Repertory Company. I'd done a reading with him. And I was like, I should call him, just get his thoughts. I want to be an artistic director one day. I want to do producing. I want to do this. Let me get his thoughts. I call him and I tell him my idea. I'm like, look, we have a 33.6% population of Latin people in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There is zero art that speaks to them. Zero. Why? Right? And he was like, I've been thinking that too. And then we just had conversation. I was like, we should do a reading of references to Salvador Dali, Make Me Hot by Jose Rivera. I love this playwright. I love that play. I've been trying to do that play forever. I was like, we could do a reading of that, or we could do this, or we could do that. Or I had an idea to like maybe do a bilingual version of like R&J, but I don't know. And he was like, wait, that we could do that at our Shakespeare for Sunset. We could do a whole production. We could do this, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, can you write it? Yeah, I can write it. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. Hang up the phone. Oh shit. I'm gonna write a play. Okay. I didn't expect that. That was like my last option that I pitched to him. I had like 5 other things that were already built, right? But he liked it. And then I thought, okay, well, if I want to do a thing about family and food and culture, and this, can that fit into R&J? Well, it's a family play. Okay. What if I twist the screws on it? What if I do this? And what if I do that? And what if it's, you know, Paul Neruda versus Shakespeare, but also it has my voice over the top, and we find this. And it really became about the notion of creating a new culture, of what it is when 2 people bring different ideas to the table, And instead of letting them be their destruction, letting it be their uprising, right? And I really based it around tradición and fusion, like all through the lens of food. So really, it's like, what is it to keep the tradition that keeps us afloat, that is our history, that is our legacy, but also allowing for the fusion that is taking that legacy and putting a new ingredient on it, right? Taking it to a new level, showing us that there is more to see, right? And that balance is really tricky because we have, and that speaks universally to everything, to politics, to family dynamics, to like whatever you want to put on it, right? But here it's food, right? And I think that the most important thing for me as well was speaking to my community, but not only my community, to show people that we can share morals cross-culturally. We can all relate to what it is to eat food. We all have to eat, right? Some people you eat in Madrid, I can eat in Peru, in New York, in Florida, and this, but no matter what, some ingredients make sense. This might remind you of home, or like, I didn't try this before, and that reminds me of this, and how my mother used to make this, and my grandma, it all kind of comes together. And for me, it was like, how do I take this timeless story, keep the plot somewhat intact, but change the story and make it about hope, about faith, about authenticity and artistry, and having difficult conversations through the lens of Shakespeare, but twisting it. And really why I wanted to do an adaptation of R&J, and people ask me all the time, like, why did you just write a new play? I said, well, because it would be very difficult to achieve what I'm achieving in a new play, I think, for me, right? For the skill set I have. I love Shakespeare. I'm totally like identify as like a Shakespearean actor. Like I love this text. And what I wanted to do was hold a foundation so that any culture could come to the theater and have a relationship to Romeo and Juliet off the bat. So they know what the thing might be. So then I can start to challenge you and put a little extra seasoning on top of it. And I remember I asked my niece Penelope, I was like, hey, what do you know about Romeo and Juliet? And she was like, they're in love. And I was like, that's all I need. If a child knows that, and that's their first like thing about Romeo and Juliet, I am happy with that. And I can just hang this whole thing on love, right? And cross-examining it, showing it, taking it, whatever it might be. And that's been my thesis with this project. And the beautiful thing about it is how much I've learned in this past year, being in New York. And after we did a reading with Jackie at the North Carolina Black Repertory Theater. So it was like, I had a year, I wrote it, and then we performed it. And it was lovely to see the, we had food trucks, we had people eating food, we had music. It was this whole celebration, which was the whole thing for me was like, I want them to have a taste of the culture, literally, So there was people there eating ceviche, eating tacos, eating this, eating that, like watching this play. And it was speaking to them in their language, no matter if you were American, Latin, or from anywhere, whatever it might have been. And I remember speaking to a bunch of different people after there was Peruvian people there. That was so incredible for me. There was a man who reminded me of my grandfather, which was so touching. And I remember there's this one joke about Lima being gray because Lima is always gray. And one guy just went, and I'll never forget that moment because it was like, it was just the specificity. It was just a lovely reaction. I'll never forget that. But I remember speaking to this American guy from North Carolina, and he was like, I don't speak Spanish, but I understood it all. Because at the end of the day, what I think is that language isn't words, it's passion. And you can follow an actor, a human, going through an emotional roller coaster and connection, no matter what language they speak. That's why we like opera, right? That's why we like these epic stories, because we don't necessarily have to understand them. Silent films do the same thing, So for me, it was about connecting Shakespeare and language and culture and all those things together. And now, after this year and after that reading, I've learned so much and been able to be in these incredible rooms, and they've just influenced and influenced and influenced and influenced. And I found new collaborators and incredible people that have been willing to chat with me about these things, and I'm learning. And it gets me really excited to continue working, continue crafting the work, and navigating the business to get me to the place where I can, have a workshop, do a production of this, and hopefully, have the message be heard, and start some conversation.
You went from school to basically getting your first huge job on Broadway. So I'm assuming that must have made very apparent the things that they never teach you in school, because they can't teach you everything that you ended up learning while doing the work. So in your work as a coach, have you incorporated those things that you learned once you were doing the actual job? And how does that go into the bilingual teaching that you do as well?
Of course. I'll start with that, with the bilingual coaching. What was important for me was to create a space where young actors, just actors, could bring in pieces and get coaching in whatever language they choose in that moment that I have the skill set for, which is English and Spanish, right? I found out pretty early in school, or just like by auditioning, or seeing what was out in the industry, that almost everything I was going to do, I was going to be cast as a Latin person, right? Which comes with a couple of things, which means it's not as many auditions as I would hope, right? But also, you might just have to speak in Spanish or in English or both, right? So you have to have a level of in your head competency with all these things, right? So truly what was important for me, and that's how RNJ actually started, was like me making a curriculum for myself of how I needed to train outside of school. Because I also think it's a myth that like everything you learn in school, it's like you need to create your own curriculum in life, like period. I just think that like that's just because you have to know what you want to do and then do it. And for me, I started, reading Neruda's translation of Romeo and Juliet, like, and all these things, they're connected, so I started reading, and I was like, es Julieta, es el sol en el oriente, as opposed to, see, and that's where the languages, they start to get muddled, and you start to forget the lines, and you start to think, okay, well, in this language or in that language, and then it is the east and Juliet is the sun. Es Julieta, es el sol en el oriente. Those are two different thoughts. It's a translation, but they're two different thoughts. And like, I was interested in that. I was like, how are you articulating so beautifully, but differently, and like, that was interesting to me. So I started playing around with that. And that's why now in my coaching and my teaching, I want to provide that space where like we can have those conversations. We can throw paint at the wall. We can say, well, if you want to try, to do this Jose Rivera piece like this and like that, and then maybe translate it all to Spanish yourself and just do it and see what you find and then split the difference. You know what I mean? It's like, it can be a place for like that sort of play that can only really be done by someone seeing a hole and trying to fill it. And that's what I was trying to do, because I knew that would happen to me. It was selfish. I was like, I need to be able to go from English to Spanish like this, right? And I remember I did an audition for something my senior year that was all in Spanish. It's tough. My voice and speech training, everything is in English, right? Everything that I have learned logistically and artistically as an actor has been in English. Entonces, para yo poder empezar a hablar español y hablarlo bien, that's a different thing, to be able to just boom, boom, boom. There's vowels, there's consonants, there's more brightness. There's a completely different thing. Singing in Spanish, another thing, you know what I mean? But they all can feed each other, but you have to be able to see that. So like, that was how I started my work on that. And now I just open that up to like, to try and pass that down, the things that I learned and that I figured out, and then to let other people take that in, and then they can take it and bend it and do it, and then I'll learn and we learn and everything, and teaching has been an incredible part of my career because, right before I moved to the city as well, I taught at the summer session at UNCSA. I taught Shakespeare, and the fulfillment I felt from teaching these kids who had no relationship to Shakespeare, but just came in and started speaking the speech, it was an incredible journey for me. And a lot of them became clients of mine. And that's how I kind of started this business, right? But we have a responsibility, I think, as artists to preserve the passion, and the only way to do that is to feel it yourself and then have the courage to express it. And it's contagious. It's contagious. I remember going into Florida School of the Arts, my second, it was I was there like in the summer visiting, and Patricia Crotty, who's a legendary professor there who just retired. She was teaching a Shakespeare class. She was talking about meter. And she was talking about the dum, the dum, the dum. And she's just pacing across the room. She's like, and this is what it means. And because it's the heartbeat. And that's what the character's trying to express this in this moment. And that's why the meter helps you find. And I was like, what is she talking about? I have no idea, but I want to know. And that's like, that's the line. You don't have to know what it is. You just need to know that the person speaking about it is incredibly passionate. That was what it was for me. So now, and that's why I focus on that as a part of my curriculum, but also it's, how to break down TV and film scripts. I was lucky enough to work with Bob Krakauer for 4 years at UNCSA. Like, I want to be like also able to, like, the more I teach that, the more I learn too. You know what I mean? That's the thing about being an artist, and Shakespeare, and just, I've been doing a lot of college coaching, for kids in high school that are looking for the conservatory, because I'm so fresh out of it and I have this perspective that really helps us kind of figure out what exactly is needed. So that's been great for me, to have that experience teaching and also weave it through my work, make it, because I can only teach what I have learned and I'm learning, and I love being able to, because I was teaching while I was doing, I'm teaching today, but like I was teaching when I was in the rehearsal process of Camelot, and I would get home, like make dinner and teach. And I would be like, okay, well, I'm going to take this idea that we talked about today in Camelot, and we're going to talk about that. And it was really cool to take something from a Broadway rehearsal room into the classroom and have really striking conversation with a young artist who's on the come up, who's very smart, Like, if you choose to study theater and like there's something in you for it, I just think there's something connected inside of you that you're trying to get out. You don't need to necessarily have the words for it. That's what playwrights are for, they help you find the words. So that it continues to be a beautiful thing for me, and something I really cherish and will continue doing.
Matías, you have made me very, very hungry with all the food talk. So let us wrap up on a food question then. If someone were to commission you to create a Camelot and a Romeo y Julieta Limeño sandwich, what would go in each of them? Wow. Or an empanada, if you want.
This might be the best question I've ever been asked. Okay. So, Camelot, French baguette, a spicy ají amarillo, cilantro, lime, mayonesa. Maybe like a short rib. Yeah. Like short rib, like really slowly braised in like wine and fresh broth with like a lot of rosemary, but like really slowly. I make this, it's so good, and it just falls out of the bone. Take that and put that on the sandwich. Get some like really like funky cheese, maybe like a blue cheese. I don't know, like a goat cheese. I love goat cheese. And we're gonna do some pickled onions on top, some basil, and a little like just a dash of, no, that's it. Boom, boom. That's Camelot right there. Boom. Classic French with a twist. Right. Romeo y Julieta Limeño. What I would make you is a lomo saltado empanada. So the thing about Peruvian empanadas, though, is that when you make the breading, it's sweet. There's like azúcar on top. You know what I mean? So it has a completely different reaction with the lime, so it isn't like, it's crocante, but it's not, but it's sweet. It's sweet and savory at the same time. So I would take that con el azúcar encima, and then the lomo saltado, which is filet mignon sauteed with ají amarillo, tomatoes, red onion, cilantro, soy sauce, white vinegar, garlic, and just all that together, and y tiene su arrocito y su papa frita. So boom, into an empanada, so you can get all the taste right there.
My stomach's making sounds, right? So,
this is a great question, and you have to put my shit to the test, and I love that.
Matías, ha sido un verdadero placer. Thank you for your time. And would you like to tell us everything that you have coming up. It's your chance to plug every project that you have going on right now.
Yes, of course. August 4th at the Atrium with Jaime and Familia. We're doing this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful concert. And I'm so excited to share these immigrant stories and this love with our community. And please come see Camelot. We are in our run right now at Lincoln Center Theater. I think it's a beautiful show that really challenges what it is to be a leader, what it really challenges to make theater, and what we're here to actually do on this planet in the time that we have. I think I really believe in the story, and I believe in the team, and I really urge people to come see it. It's beautiful music and a great epic story. And when it comes to Romeo y Julieta Limeño, we're in the process of all the ins and outs it takes to produce work in New York. So I'll keep my website and everything updated on that as we're going. And I'm just so excited to be able to share all this work here in New York.
Since you're bilingual, you get both a break a leg and mucha mierda.
Mucha mierda, muchas gracias.
Gracias, Matías.
Gracias, José.
Ha sido un placer.
Un placer, de verdad.